In 8 weeks, I converted my barn into a TV studio. Now I interview the best brains in sales. Welcome to Best Practice for Sales Professionals. And today I am delighted to introduce someone who is a true business development professional. She's a growth consultant specialized in prepaid, debit and crypto markets, and she helps companies build loyalty and growth. She definitely knows what she's talking about because she works for MasterCard and has been associated with the launch of Tide. And when she gets the time, she is also a stand-up comedian. Emily Baum, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
Emily, thanks for coming on to the show. We're going to discuss today why companies should hire more proactive salespeople who are not afraid of reaching out, speaking to customers they've not spoken to before. But what I'm interested in is how do you go about finding new clients and how do you approach them?
That's a really great question. So obviously I work in quite a niche market, so it's not a case of sticking an advert up on Google. So I have to basically leverage my reputation, leverage my network, and utilize the people that I know. So I get a lot of referrals predominantly and a lot of contacts from LinkedIn as well, typically.
Wow, that's good. I guess your reputation precedes you, as they say.
Well, yes, and I'm very fortunate. I've had a very lucky track record. So people often find me, and there aren't many people that do what I do as well, specifically for my space too.
So thanks for that. So we're going to talk about proactive sales. Why should organizations be interested in hiring proactive salespeople?
I have had so many phone calls since the beginning of lockdown from different people that I know that have said, oh, can you get me a shark of a business person? I need someone that's just not frightened to just hit the phones, start tapping everybody up for deals. I need deals. And there's I think people are panicking a little bit during lockdown, which is making them make very stressed decisions, which isn't always the smart approach for these things, but there has certainly been a higher demand for aggressive, very resilient type of business development activity because people are desperate. They've seen their pipelines go from being very abundant at the beginning of March to being incredibly dry. So of course, people are going to be very nervous and they're going to be very reactive. Is an aggressive salesperson the right solution for every business at the moment? I would argue no, but it's certainly where I'm seeing a lot of people turning to, especially for hiring.
So you learned your trade as a salesperson, knocking on doors, selling exterior cladding.
Yes, very glamorous.
How, I used to be a door-to-door salesperson as well. I know a little bit about this. So how have you been able to use the skills, the attitudes and the knowledge that you learned there to become, a professional in payments?
I think when you're doing door-to-door, you learn to be resilient. I mean, you see the best of people, you see the worst of people, you see people at their most vulnerable sometimes. You might be knocking on a door in the middle of a family argument. You might be knocking on the door in the middle of someone. I had someone who was being sick the other side of the door once. So you never know what you're going to walk into. So actually that gives you a lot of preparation because sometimes when we start the sales cycle, we almost get to a stage where we feel we can predict the conversations we're going to have. And then when someone goes off piste or they go off track and it's not what you're expecting, that can throw a lot of salespeople. If you've been in a situation where it's door to door and someone's dog could come out and shock you and try and bite you, you know how to react in every single situation, whether that be positive or negative. You're pretty resilient. And I think it teaches you to also be a lot more human and have more human interactions with people too.
I remember my boss taught me that when you walked in somebody's house and the TV was on, rather than having a fight with the TV, just join them and watch TV for 5 minutes and then try to get to the business end of things. It's so true. You've got to be human and adapt.
In order to, especially in that environment where you're driven by numbers, you have to get as many sales as possible. It's a numbers game. The more slips of paper you walk away with, the better you're doing. But again, you might be ingratiating yourself into somebody's home during feeding time with the children. during family dinner time. They might have just had some terrible news. You have no idea. So you have to be able to go from that whole sales patter to actually, are you all right? Can I help? And that is definitely something that I think is what helps you with your sales career moving forward. I'm very much relationship driven and consultative driven, and I've found that's been my niche.
Excellent. So as we're sort of coming out of lockdown and COVID has happened, what does good look like for sales professionals moving forward?
I think good at the moment is having anything in your pipeline. I know businesses, as I'm sure you do, that have just been completely and utterly devastated and are now looking at mass redundancies. They're looking at trying to stabilize their cash flow. They're looking at additional revenue stream. They're even looking at winding up. So if you are a business and you have got clients, potential clients in your pipeline, you're having proactive conversations, people are very aware of your business, I would say you're winning. I think if you're closing deals, and you have been closing deals in July, then you are exceeding expectations. And I think we've got to actually, whereas we're very driven in the sales environment to hit, and a lot of us need that kind of kick of doing a successful sale. I think in this climate, we have to be quite kind to ourselves and say, it will come. You just have to show a little bit of patience, which I also understand isn't easy when you're dependent on cash flow, you're dependent on closing deals to keep your business afloat. But patience is definitely where we're going to win.
So if you were to give a business your top 3 tips with regards to finding and hiring and working with these proactive salespeople, what would they be?
I think you need to weigh up when you're hiring someone that's going to be a hunter for you, someone who's going to be quite a driven and aggressive salesperson. You need to be able to give them very, very clear and concise goals, because that type of salesperson, it's a bit like training an attack dog. You need to point them in a very, very clear direction to get the outcome that you want in the time frame that you want. It's not fair on a salesperson that works that way if they get airy-fairy guidance. So if someone was to say, I need you to go after and target payments people, that's great, but there are, hundreds of different sectors, tens of different sectors. So you need to be very, very focused and give them clear, concise instructions.
Okay, and maybe to finish off, any other tips that you would give companies that really want to work with proactive salespeople?
Just make sure that the people that you're hiring fit the type of business that you're selling. So if you're selling technology solutions, that requires much more of a consultative sale versus someone that's selling, say, guttering, which is much more aggressive, hit the phones, it's a numbers game, as opposed to a much more consultative approach.
Emily, it's a pleasure having you on the show. When is your next gig?
Well, that's the great unknown. It's the great unknown. We've been asked to do all sorts of different things. Comedy obviously getting battered at the moment and being a business that is really, really struggling. So I've been asked if I'll do a series of road shows. So I could be coming to a car roof in a car park near you anytime now, Kurt.
Excellent.
So glamorous.
Great. Hey, thanks again for coming on the show, and all the best.
Thanks.
Bye. If you like the show, then share and let others know. If you'd like a sales subject covered during the show, then let me know. And if you want some help with your sales challenges, then feel free to get in touch. There's always a way forward.